Did you know facts tell, but stories sell? I had to learn this the hard way. Early in my career, I was responsible for new hire orientation at the manufacturing plant where I was the HR person. And there's a lot of data that is shared in those meetings. People would often end up feeling bored or maybe being frustrated because of the amount of information that was shared. Lucky for me, an HR colleague took me aside and told me the importance of tying stories to each of the data points that I was sharing. Hi, I'm Leslie Fiorenzo, and in this video today, I want to share with you how storytelling can make your presentations much more powerful and encourage you to create, if you have not done so already, a signature story for your business. So let's think about this in a couple of different ways. First of all, it's your story structure that's important. There's three things to keep in mind, or three ways to set up your structure: the hook, the emotion, and the call to action. The hook is the introduction, the question, the challenge, the goal, something that is intriguing and makes people's ears perk up. What does your listener want to know from you? Then the emotion. Engage people with the emotion. And that's part of the reason we like a well-told story, because we resonate with the emotion. Now, we like to think as humans we are creatures of logic, when in fact we are creatures of emotion, and emotions are what help us drive decisions forward. It's really how we make decisions in the first place. We make them emotionally, and then we back them up with data. So when you can engage your audience at an emotional level, it adds to the intrigue. Then you want to end with a call to action, the final takeaway. What do you want someone to do as a result of your presentation? Think of creating your story with that end in mind. So that's where you start. What do I want someone to do as the result of listening to me? Do I want them to sign up for something? Do I want them to enroll in a course? Do I want them to give me their email? Or am I simply sharing information and I want them to be better informed about the subject? Start with your end goal in mind. Create that opening hook or idea, and remember, it's the emotion that is the important piece, and that makes the difference in your storytelling. For instance, if you look at TED Talks, right? Brene Brown's talk on vulnerability, hugely popular TED Talk. She shares her experiences as a researcher, and she shares personal stories to illustrate her key points about human connection. Another one of my favorite TED Talks, Amy Cuddy's. Amy Cuddy's talk on body language interweaves her personal story of overcoming the imposter syndrome with her research findings. Now, research findings in general, it's a lot of data and typically quite boring. If you have not seen this TED Talk, take a look at Rosling. He's a Swedish physician and statistician. He takes this complex topic of navigating information and shares it in a captivating way. So he begins with a personal anecdote about teaching Swedish students about global health, discovering their misconceptions about the developing world. Then Rosling weaves his family history into the presentation, talking about his grandmother's experience with childbirth and how that relates to global health. Then he does some vivid analogies, like comparing the lifespan of people in Vietnam, someone his own age, to himself, making this abstract data more relatable. And finally, he incorporates humor and some theatrical elements. At one point, swallowing a sword on stage to illustrate his point. Now you might be thinking, "Oh my gosh, I can't tell a funny story. I'm not funny at all, and I certainly can't swallow a sword on stage." Guess what? You don't have to. I want to encourage you, first of all, be yourself, but think about it. What is something that I could do that is unique and would be interesting to my audience? More than likely, you have several stories and several ways you can tell the story. With a little bit of practice and a little bit of work, it can become apparent. Here's some ways you can do that. Think about why. Simon Sinek has this idea that we start with why. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So what's your why? And then dig down. Keep asking the question why over and over again. I've heard people say it's 5 times. I've also heard people say it 7 times. But that question why can help you dig a little deeper and uncover some stories. You're familiar with the hero's journey. It's in a lot of movies. Think about The Hobbit or other Tolkien books, other stories. The hero's journey is kind of the ultimate in storytelling, but it's the main character, the problem they face, the challenge they overcame, and then the ultimate benefit they received. So that's in a nutshell what that hero's journey story is all about. Then you might think about an object and relate it to your topic. Maybe you have a favorite book, or maybe you use an object in your practice. You could tell a story about how that's helped a client or how it's helped you personally. Remember, personal experiences that illustrate your point help you resonate with your audience or with your potential client. People like to connect with people that are like them. So the more we are relatable to our audience, the more they are likely to connect with you and do what you've asked. Remember that what's the call to action? What do you want as a result? If you want them to connect with your LinkedIn profile, for example, you want to be relatable. Think about practicing with a trusted colleague and doing a story swap. What are some things that you can share, they can share, you can practice? This is the challenge because we are all busy, but I want to encourage you to think about in terms of building your ability to present and your ability to tell stories. Practice is huge. So find a colleague who is also interested in investing in themselves and taking the time to share and create, and set aside an hour to work on your stories and share ideas back and forth. Then a week later, set aside another hour. It doesn't have to be 8 hours at a time, although that might be amazing to do that. Spend one day working on your story with a colleague, or I should say stories, and see what the result is. The other thing I want you to think about is the headline test. You can put headlines into AI. That is the beauty of AI now, and just see what might resonate. Experiment, have some fun. Use AI as a tool. It is so powerful, and many people are afraid. Don't be. Use it as a tool and discover how it can help you in your business, because it can. The last idea I want to share with you in terms of creating stories is find some quotes. I love quotes. I have a couple books, but I'm always searching for quotes that back up my point. So use that as a tool. find some stories, then dig a little deeper. Tell me a story about the person who made the quote, why they were doing what they were doing at the time, all those kinds of things. I think that backstory is really interesting. So, ladies and gentlemen, using storytelling techniques can transform your message. The last piece of advice I would leave you is never tell a story without a point, and every time you make a point, attach a story to it. So never tell a story without a point, never make a point without a story. I learned that the hard way early in my career. I told several stories because somebody said, you've got to tell stories in my presentation, but they had absolutely nothing to do. They were fun stories, they were engaging stories, but they didn't have anything to do with my topic. So my audience was lost in the process, and I left them confused. That is not a good place to leave an audience. You want to leave them with a specific call to action, a specific reason why you shared that story, and connect the dots for your audience. So it is my pleasure always to share this information with you. And of course, if you know someone that could benefit by this video, please feel free to share it. And as always, if you haven't, subscribe to my channel so you get the weekly videos. See you next time.